What is the idea? It is the evident aspect of what is offered. It is the surface, it is the facade, the offering to the regard of what opens up in nature. It is still, of course, appearing as the aura-like being of being, but without the determination, the cutout, and the visibility, or sorry, without the delimitation, the cutout of visibility for us.
And see, this is where I'm kind of confused, because there's a whole lot of talk about visibility and appearance, right? Which, of course, the idea is that being, right, the one is not, right? It's not encapsulated in visualization and appearance and things like this.
But here he's discussing Heidegger's interpretation of Plato. And for Heidegger, of course, this is a question of appearance.
Right, and this is when I read this this meditation, the idea that I got is, listen, Heidegger's going about it all wrong because he's going through nature and it's through appearance and it's through visibility, right? And even though there are notions about it that are Platonic, the idea as it's stapled to nature is not good enough because it's stapled to nature. So visualization, appearance, and things like that. So maybe he got it right on some points, but Heidegger, in the end, won't be able to provide us with an ontology.
I think that's, if I may, I think that's partially right, but also you need to be very careful with Heidegger. When Heidegger talks about appearance, right, the phenomena is linked to retoros, right, which is what again is the thing that shows itself or that speaks in itself, and it's not a simple Kantianism, right? It's not that there's a phenomena that is then this surface, and then there's this deeper, noumena that is unreachable, but rather the phenomena is the thing that stands out of the thing in itself in its own most, right? Which is different from the Kantian noumena, which is fundamentally cut. At least in my reading. Joe, do you have any?
Yeah, I've got another vector I'd be going down.
Yeah, just the very fact of the noumena is the thing that's in itself, that by virtue of we can't experience it, it's unknowable to us.
Right, but for Heidegger, that's not the case. For Heidegger, the appearance is the very thing that unveils to us the thing in itself.
Or appearingness, I would say.
Right.
Rather than the appearance.
But the appearance happens in being. It's an uncovering of being, right? The sign.
So withdrawal is a crucial notion we haven't mentioned. This is why I said there's another vector I'd go down. For Heidegger, there's this idea of being as... I think I should write this so it's... so if we can distinguish between being and beings, right? This being the German Sein, this being the German Seienden. So that... Seienden, yikes. So we're working with two completely different words, so it looks very similar in English, right? Sein is an infinitive, literally should be translated to be. These are beings in the sense of objects or whatever. And for Heidegger, what's happening in a human being, what Dasein is Dasein. It's being right there. Being is unfolding itself in a place. So if this is the Dasein, and that's the Da, which means there in German, then right there being is unfolding itself. But the way it does that, ironically, is by withdrawing itself from there. So human beings, Daseins are this sort of empty clearing where Sein, being, has disappeared, withdrawn. And this is this idea of withdrawal for him. So that human beings are this kind of gap or space in which beings appear precisely because being has withdrawn itself. So, and that's what he sees the early Greek poets thinking through. They're thinking along with being. So, and it begins to shift with Parmenides, but he's reading the pre-Parmenidean philosophers as thinkers. He draws a distinction between philosophy and thought. And they're thinking being, dismissing beings, reducing from that, if you will, to being itself. But that with Parmenides, we begin to make this shift, and then in Plato, especially, we make the shift to where now we think being purely through the forms and make it a question of the eidos, of the apparent. And so, because literally, and the word for idea, the forms, is etymologically related to the word for idol, right? It's this appearance, it's this something you can handle and touch and see that's right in front of you. So the idea of withdrawal is crucial for him. That's what's forgotten with Plato's embrace of the forms and mathematization is that we forget the withdrawal. We think being is still here and can be thought through forms and appearances.
The forgetting of the forgetting,
Yeah.
as Heidegger also says. And if you're really interested in this, and you, not to anyone here, but and don't want to read very much, the first essay of An Introduction to Metaphysics, I believe, goes over this specifically. In fact, I think one of the things he does is quote Sophocles. If I remember, it all kind of blurs together, right? But there's this analysis of Sophocles, one of the strophes speeches in Oedipus Tyrannos, which is, what is it? That man is, or maybe it's even Antigone. That man is the most unhumlich, right? At home, or
Uncanny.
Uncanny. Yeah, unnatural.
Not at home is literally what it means. Yeah.
Right, and so of course, right, he talks about how, because humanity, right, is this gap in being, it becomes the hunter, right? It goes out and takes hold. And this sort of taking hold, for Heidegger, which is not the Platonic idios, right, is this taking hold of the appearance in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And then this is what authentic existence is. It's an endless violence towards the world of beings to grasp that being as such.
Yeah. So to put me off for a second longer than Chris, what I think he's doing then on page 124 by saying the Galilean reference to Plato is not accidental, is to say that when Galileo mathematizes nature and constantly refers himself back to Plato, he's going back to this very same forgetting of the forgetting the withdrawal, and failing to recognize that there's this, that poetry is the way of thinking along with being. So that's what Badiou's trying to point out about Heidegger's entire reading.
And yeah, just to punctuate that, that's for Heidegger,
Right.
not for Badiou.
Badiou's going to go on to criticize them.
Right, yeah, because Badiou is going to fall in line, not perfectly, but with Plato and Galileo against Heidegger.
Right. So would you say then that the serious problem that the evaluation, the subtraction that happens through eliminating the da and da sign, then is because he goes through poiesis rather than the mathematics? Is that what's being said?
Well, if I understand the notion of withdrawal, it's the very point at which a being becomes a series of beings, right? You're instrumentalizing yourself with the hammer, so you're not thinking about the hammer. But Heidegger's rejection of Galileo and Plato is going to be the fact that, again, science doesn't think. You're instrumentalizing yourself, the thought of being. But Badiou is quick to reject that and says, no, mathematics is ontology. This is how we think being is pure multiple. And this is sort of the rejection of Heidegger.
But the question, of course, is why? And the reason why there is this rejection is because mathematics is ontology, which is to say that there's no, let me see, I had it just 1 second. Well, he talks about it as an aura, that this, it's, what does he call it, the anxiety of the void? It's this failure to recognize that the void is omnipresent rather than this notion of forgetting. That, or rather, let me put
If
it
you want
more.
the anxiety of the void, it's on 94, but maybe that's not the same you're thinking of.
No. Well, let me just put it in a different way. Rather than having ontology as poiesis, ontology is subtractive, right? So it's not. It's sort of. I mean, this is the perennial battle. I guess it's not that perennial. So it's
The
only
way you put
years.
it there is really, really clear. So can I bank on that for just
Sure.
a moment? I mean, the idea is, Badiou is agreeing that being is withdrawn. That being can't be experienced as being. We only experience beings. But the point is, for Heidegger, poetry then is to think that in a poetic way, to poetize the withdrawal of being. Whereas Badiou is going to say, how do we think that thing that's not here? Subtractively, mathematically.
Right. Well, and this is the eternal war, or again, I guess not particularly eternal since it's only 100 years old, if that, between Lacan and Heidegger, right? For Heidegger, right, there is this withdrawal, there is this lack, which then we need to come to understand, come to grips with. The most obvious of these would be death, right? For Heidegger,
Or
right?
boredom.
Or what?
Or boredom.
Or boredom,
Like,
right? As revealing,
yeah.
right, this distance, right? This thing that is mine, that is indeterminate, and is not to be outstripped, and is mine in my own most. Okay, but here's the Lacanian point, which is no, that thing you think is missing is the very thing which grants the possibility for your existence, right? It is the après coup, the symptom. So this is where, it's not quite this simple, right? Badiou is beyond, he's post-Lacanian.
Yeah.
But the point is not, we have lost this thing and we need to regain it. The Lacanian point is that this very lost thing is what grants the consistency of our very appearing. So what happens, and this is, I've been struggling with this idea myself, but I think I'm coming to get a hang of it. It's not simply that being is lost and needs to, or covered and needs to be revealed. It's aletheia. It's that being subtracts itself from being.